for you too, and now it's not. Um, so about 13 years ago, everyone, 3 minutes in, this is where it begins. G'day. About 13 years ago, I was at a dinner with some people who are older than me. They were more experienced and they lived through things that at the time I fully appreciated. But you don't know that when you're in your, well, look, I'm not going to talk about others. I was in my 20s. I was energetic, successful, intellectually confident, and I genuinely felt like a fully formed adult, ready to go toe to toe on ideas and speak openly. But I guess what I didn't see, I don't know if it's 20s, naiveties, autism, I'm not sure what combination of that it was. But what I didn't see was, thank you for the like, how different one can appear to someone who doesn't know you and doesn't know your context and whose sense of reality has been shaped by long memory, not recent momentum. And when I say long memory, when you're 20, when someone has a memory of 40 years ago, it's too difficult, it's too abstract to conceive of what that means. And you just think, oh, that happened ages ago. Who cares? What does that matter to us now? And it's only now that I realize what happens to one when they're 20s stays with you when you're not 20. Um, so at the table, there were two people who shared history, culture, and background, and they reacted to me in completely opposite ways. So one of them felt a sense of closeness, and we're still friends today. The other felt discomfort and didn't speak to me since. And that stuck with me for a long time, for a very long time. I couldn't explain it. And then when I was able to explain it using earlier models, I then tried to apply those models to future things and they break down. But I finally got a model that makes a bit more sense and that works and explains other factors, nothing to do with that situation. So I thought to myself, how the hell does this happen? And over the years, I kept thinking about it. And I thought, I don't want to assign blame because sometimes you do go, oh, I was young, I was an idiot, blah, blah, blah. But I thought, let's not look at a political or moral model. Let's just look at an explanation, some sort of cognitive explanation. Um, so the best way to describe it is that it was recognizing that people's view of identity can fit into either a discrete and binary, being an intersection of a certain ethno-construct, and another version being a continuous and spectral version. So the difference between, for example, an on and off switch and a wave, or a particle and a wave, even if you're thinking physics analogy. Right? So once I saw that distinction, a lot of things in human behavior started to become legible. So I'll talk about each model, and as I said, no moral sense, no political sense, it's just structural. Right? So model A and model B. Model A, the discrete binary identity. It looks at identity functions like a set. So it is not enough that you have a certain ethnicity, but it's the intersection of the ethnicity and the specific cultural construct. And so the identity functions like a set. Membership therefore becomes binary, either in or out. Boundaries become protective. So at the edge of that boundary, you can become potentially a threat. If you're on the other side of that boundary, then you're definitely a threat. The core logic is inside versus outside. So in that particular framework, shared ancestry doesn't necessarily produce closeness. Overlap can feel like dilution. And so if, for example, someone with that mind, which is completely their right, no, I'm saying it's just that someone who has that mental model, if someone else says, oh, we're neighbors, the word neighbor can be seen as a threat because you're not in, you're out. Right? Neighboring cultures can feel more threatening than distant ones. Then I look at model B, the continuum spectral identity. And in this model, we've got, of course, as I was just saying, identity is a spectrum. Difference is a degree, not a rupture. So when we say, oh, we're neighbors, one in that particular case looks at an overlap. Oh, that's interesting. We have a similar language. Oh, we have the same ethnicity. We have the same DNA. Oh, we have the same shared history if you go back 100 generations or 10 generations. It only diverges at a certain point, and that becomes a degree as opposed to in or out. In this particular type, what happens is that neighbors end up forming kinships and not threats. And difference is understood as evolution, not erasure. So it doesn't take away from one's particular identity if you yourself say, oh, I'm also of that identity, but a slightly different version, right? And this is interesting because the point is that despite that model, history doesn't change, ancestry doesn't change, and geography doesn't change. But the emotional interpretation changes. And that helped me not only understand the situation that happened at the dinner table, but things all over the world. Why, for example, people who are closer in origin can sometimes have more hostility to each other than those who are far apart. In the discrete model, proximity increases threat, and in a continuum model, proximity increases empathy. And this is quite fascinating to me because now when I talk to at the one person who remained friends with me from that dinner table, we talk about the slight linguistic differences in our origins, which shows that we're sort of two different leaves on the same branch or two different branches on the same tree. And once again, that happens to be my position, so there's a slight bias, but I'm not saying one is better or worse than the other at all. They result in different reactions. Were I aware of that in my 20s at that dinner table, I would have been a lot wiser in how I came across so that I would not have to force one of the persons who agreed with my worldview to have to sit between the tension of two people who saw the world quite differently. So it was something that I really affected me in the long term and helped me start to think very deeply about it. The